Welcome to the Science and Spirituality Podcast, where we dive deep into universal spiritual principles and ground them in modern science. My name is Chris Carden.
And my name is Kevin Carden. And we are committed to simplifying the spiritual side of success for you with easy to understand scientific research so you could walk away with practical tools to create radical transformations in your life. Let's get started.
So we wanted to start this episode by just asking our audience, our listeners, that, some of you might have been listening to us for a while. Some of you might have been following us on Instagram for a while. And, we're really appreciative of your attention and, you just following us and trusting us with delivering you this information. If you've gotten anything from this podcast or anything from any of me or Kevin's posts, we sincerely ask you to leave a rating and a comment on the podcast. So you can do that through Apple iTunes. I'm not sure if you can do it on Spotify yet, but Apple iTunes, Google Podcasts, anywhere where you can leave a review, it would really help us out because the more reviews we have, the more eyes and the more attention this can get in front of. And we really feel like our message is important for, the times that we're going through right now. And so if you can just help us out, it'll take 5 minutes. We'd be super grateful. And thank you. So this episode, we wanted to start with a listener question. I believe it was a listener question. And the question goes, how to navigate and expand on awakening of your true self, particularly for young adults with a lot of social, financial, political, and cultural pressure. And so actually, Kev, it's funny, looking at our podcast statistics, a lot of our listeners are in like the 17 to 45 range. So a lot of people will hopefully resonate with this question of feeling those social, political, like all the financial pressures. And
cultural too.
Yeah. And I think it all starts with your definition of what success and happiness mean for you. Because I feel like as we grow up, we fold into this structure of society. Our parents teach us things, our teachers teach us things, and we have this idea of what we think success or happiness means. But if we don't get under the hood and actually ask ourselves, is that what we believe? We can go through our whole life believing that getting a really good job or like having a really nice car or having a really nice house is the key to happiness, but that cannot fulfill us at all. So I think it's the first part of this, answering this question, is awareness and really understanding what success and happiness means for you.
Yeah, because it's always, it's not, you can't have anything but the programming you've grown up with unless you do have this experience of asking that question. Mm-hmm. And if you've never asked that question before in your life, then most likely you are defining your life and what or who you believe that you really are based on all the programming from the environment that you grew up in. And that includes everything from the social environment around you, like the society, the finances that your family did or didn't have, the political structure around like in the country you live in, or even like the beliefs that your caregivers, let's go with that, because it could for most people it's their parents, but it could be their grandparents or distant family or anyone that raised you, is all that political and then cultural beyond that. All that programming comes in, and that has to be. Otherwise, like when we are born, we're clean slates. Like we have the first 7 years of life comes the programming. But if we don't have that, then we can't live a human life. Like we wouldn't know what the heck to do. Like I think there's a statistic that said that like humans are like the most fragile species because like it takes so long for a human to actually become independent, like truly independent. I think it takes like several years. Because if you left a baby at, age 3-4 years old, like, or a toddler, alone, like you would die literally. Yeah. But like, I think it's like I don't know, like a bee, I think is like self-sufficient within 5 minutes. Like,
yeah. Or do you ever see if you ever YouTube videos of like giraffes being born?
Yeah.
Like they're born and then they just run right away. Yep. Like they're like, all right, no, let's go.
All right, we're good. Yeah, exactly. So for us, like for our species, is that we don't have that luxury. We have to be taken care of. And that was where all the programming comes from. So this is a great question of like how to navigate and expand on awakening of your true self. So it definitely begins with that question. I remember asking myself that question back in 2014, 2015, maybe even before that. And that really rocked my world, because I realized a lot of what I wanted was based on just, conditioning. Like I
Right.
thought that, getting a 6-figure job right out of college was the key to happiness. And that's why it's a part of the reason why I chose to become a pharmacist, which that ended up not being my path, which aligned with my true self. So like that like that question of like, what is, real, what is aligned with me? What does true happiness or success mean to me? That is like really fulfilling. That will open up some doors. And that's definitely the first step. But it definitely goes deeper than that.
Mhm.
And I think that's the beginning. But like, what would you say, Chris? Like, because I got some ideas of like what to go deeper, how to go deeper in terms of like expanding on awakening of your true self. But I think there's
Yeah.
some other things to
Well,
talk on here.
I mean, I think one of the most important things when you're starting to go on this journey is to question everything.
Mm,
Like
yeah.
if you grew up and, you thought, "Oh, a six-figure job is the key to happiness." Well, question it. Like, is it?
Mm,
Or, if um having a wife and two kids and a house in the suburbs, like that's like you've made it in America. Like ask yourself, like question it, like is it? Is it?
is
And
it?
when you start to realize is that the answers to the questions, they're personal. Like when you really sit and kind of can get quiet and ask yourself, like really like tune into yourself. And a lot of traditional schooling doesn't teach us to do that. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
traditional schooling doesn't teach us to tune into what we believe is true for ourselves. It
Yeah.
just throws information at us, and
Mm-hmm.
it programs us into this structure of society, like you said before, Kev, because that's important for people to like us, and it's important for like to get a job if you want that type of job. But like the world is changing so rapidly and so fast that especially people who are like in our generation or younger, growing up with social media and all this stuff and realizing that like you can create your own job and you can create how much you want to make in
Yeah.
so many different ways now. And so I think people younger and younger and younger are starting to question the reality that they were brought up in. And there's really no place to go for guidance. Or I mean, there is, but it's just not easy to find for guidance.
And dude, even some of that guidance is not misguided, but it may not still be aligned with your true authentic self, like who you really are. Like the guidance, I mean, because that's what programming is guidance, whether it's conscious or not. But that guidance, like, sometimes is also not a fit as well.
Mm,
Like you may look at like, and that's why, again, it comes back to that first question, is like, what is happiness for you? What is success for you?
yeah.
Because like, even if you are now waking up, and it's like, okay, like what I've been taught or learned from my whole childhood, and like I grew up with all these different programmings around me, that like, oh, like then I should look for a mentor or a guide, someone that can help me to then start my own business. Let's go with that. Like, but that's maybe still based on programming if you haven't really asked that first question, because the guidance is definitely important, but like to be careful of like where you are getting your guidance as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cause there's a lot of noise out there now too.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you just got to be careful. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it really does come down to developing that sense of understanding, or like that sense of knowing and feeling within yourself what's right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like
Yes.
for people who are just starting to question that, like it can rock your world, like you said
Yeah.
it did for you.
Yeah.
And it's because you grew up and you're literally, your brain and your nervous system were formed with these certain patterns. And so on a subconscious level, your brain and your nervous system are looking to your external world and trying to bring it in congruence with what you believe. And
Yep.
so you'll think certain things, you'll feel certain things in order for that congruence to occur, because you feel comfortable in that congruence. You feel like no matter how like misguided your programming was, you feel comfortable in that programming because it's your programming.
It's the
And
norm.
like exactly,
That's
it's
the
normal,
normal
right?
is a better word for it, because comfort is misleading, because it is a comfort zone because it's normal, but sometimes it's very uncomfortable.
Yeah, but there's like there's
Yeah.
familiarity in that uncomfort,
Exactly.
that discomfort.
Exactly.
So that's where so I use the word comfort for that. But
Yep.
yeah, I get what you mean. And so I kind of lost my train of thought where I was going with that. Oh, so depending on how long it takes you to wake up to the fact that like there is this programming and there are these agreements that you've made, it could take a lot to unwind all of that. But the first step again is having the awareness that that's the case. And then you can start telling yourself different things. You can start like meditating. So we did an episode our last episode on meditation and how meditation really quiets the outside world so that you can get more in touch with who you are and who you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
That's like one really good place, because I feel like meditation brings you back to almost that clean slate where then you can make decisions of where you want to go from there.
Exactly.
Another way to describe this whole phenomenon is like, if anyone's seen the movie The Matrix, that's kind of how it is. It's like everyone's plugged into this program and they think that it's reality, but in reality, there's this whole other realm of like you deciding what reality means for you and you deciding what beliefs you want to have. And that becomes super important once you decide what success means for you. Then you need to decide, what beliefs do I need to have in order to get that level of success?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're like, oh, if I make, $50,000 with an online business and I can stay home and play video games all day, that's success for me. And you have to develop beliefs that are against society. So you got to start developing those beliefs so you can get to that level of success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I want to touch on one thing you're sharing, because it's a lot of, like, as you were talking about, is like the subconscious beliefs and changing those to then what really aligns with you. But this is like maybe a question, because again, coming back to the core question, why we're creating this podcast, the question being how to navigate and expand on awakening your true self, like ultimately your authentic self. And so I want to define that really quick. And there's a great book recommendation I'm going to make that will help you go deeper into like what I'm talking about here. I'll mention at the end of me sharing this, but the core of all of this, like with that question, again, it's like, what is happiness? What is success for me? What do I want in my life? Ultimately getting clear on that. You will never find the real answer outside of yourself because it's already within you. But now that's kind of interesting to say, if what we said before was true, which is true, that we are embedded with all of these belief systems from the day we were born. But if the truth of who we are and our authentic self is within as well, then it comes from more than just what you've been given as a program. I believe that we have this soul print that we have within, that we were born with, like that we come into time and space and we have an experience as a human being, but we truly are a soul. We're a spirit. And so through that essence, that truth of who we are, we come into time and space to then bring forth what is in our soul. But you can only actually access that when you get past all of the beliefs that you've had, some that are limiting, some that are expansive, doesn't matter. Like they're all still just belief systems. And it goes down to the deeper core of who you are that actually can't be described with words or even intellectualized. Like I'm doing my best here to describe it, but still even the words that I'm using are still just going around the actual truth, because the truth can never actually be described. And the book recommendation I have, if you want to go deeper into to understanding what all this is and like why this is so powerful and how to do this even more deeply, it's called The Fifth Agreement by Don Miguel Ruiz. Now, his first, or I don't know if it was his first book, but the precursor to this book is called The Four Agreements. But the fifth agreement, I won't give it away of like what the fifth agreement is, but it does touch on all the other four. But in the first 3 or 4 chapters, Don Miguel Ruiz talks about how, if we go back tens and tens of thousands of years ago, even hundreds of thousands of years ago, when we first became Homo sapiens, like upright human beings with, the brain that we have, we didn't have words. There were no words, and therefore we didn't have thoughts that like we were thinking that were formulated words. There were feelings. There was this essence that we really just knew and we lived from. It wasn't like an intellectual concept like, 1 + 1 = 2. Like it's something that's way deeper than that. And that is what you were mentioning is like meditation. That helps you get into that. That helps you touch that place within yourself that is beyond the limiting beliefs or even expansive beliefs, like I said. And from that place, then you can reprogram anything that you want, because that's your seat of power. Like if you are trying to reprogram your mind from your mind, like you're just going to get stuck in a loop. And so there's so much more power when you go deeper within yourself, and it's an experience. Like we could talk about it, but ultimately it's the experience that you have. And if it's hard to describe, but like that's when you get to that place and you understand it. Like I know there's some people, maybe you listening, like you've had an experience of this, what I'm talking about. And Chris, I think you've had your share of experiences of this as well. But it's our whole learning of like coming to live from that place. That's why, that's personally for me, it's why we chose, I wanted at least the spirituality part of this whole podcast, like not this episode, but our entire show is like the science and spirituality, is that it goes deeper than all of the science. Like the science comes from the spirituality. So that's just my 2 cents on that I wanted to share.
Yeah.
That was a lot. I know.
Yeah. No, yeah, for sure. I was going to go somewhere with that, but I kind of forgot where I was going to go with it.
I could tell your mind was turning on all that.
It was turning. Yeah. It was, the gears were going there. I think what's important to realize too is, I mean, what I was thinking of was just how many people today are suffering from anxiety and depression and just disconnected at work and just not being able to make just not connections with other people. It's just people are disconnected.
Yeah.
And I feel like the reason is because so many people were brought up in this program and were imbued with certain beliefs. And I feel like everyone in their time here on earth will go through that awakening period of like, this doesn't feel right. But then so many people don't take action on it because, again, the subconscious mind is plugged into the program. And so anytime anything seems like you start questioning it, if you don't have proper guidance, it could cause this rift between like your thought process and how you feel. And I feel like that's what causes a lot of anxiety and depression, a lot of like mental health issues.
Yeah.
And so for anyone who's going through that, like, I want to say like, it's normal to feel that way. Like it's very, very normal to feel that way. And that's why, like, if you're going through that, like, read books, like pick up stuff, like follow your curiosity. Like the fifth agreement's a great place to start because it's a really good one. But like reach out to friends, like get a life coach. Like we have one sitting right here. Like, you know, you help people get through these kind of things because you help people organize their belief systems, like reorganize them once they get to like, this is what I want in my life. How do I get there? Because once you decide what you want, or once you decide like, this is what success is to me, this is what happiness is to me, then the hurdle becomes rearranging your beliefs.
Yep.
And that's hard. That's difficult, but it's possible. And it's like, it's your human right to reorganize those beliefs. It's like, you were put here for that reason. Like you were put here because you're a co-creator. Like you don't have to just stop at what other people have said is true for you. Like you have an ability to co-create in this reality. That's what I love, like watching Steve Jobs talk, because Steve Jobs is always like you weren't put here just to stay inside a box. Like you were put here to like bounce against the walls and like test the limits of like what's possible. And he had some crazy beliefs of what he can do and, you know, how the world worked. And it's usually those types of people that we end up looking up to in life, because it's those types of people that break free of the status quo and do incredible things because they have this belief that like, you know, all this stuff that I was taught, there's more.
Yeah. Exactly.
I think I got all I wanted to get out there.
Yeah. I mean, I paused for a moment, especially I'm like what you just did before. I would invite everyone to do is to take a deep breath into all of this. It's one thing to understand this intellectually and another thing to bring it into your life. Like you mentioned, Chris, like taking action on it. That's activating the awakening. You can't just be awake to it and then go back to the old pattern, because then you fall back asleep. And then when you wake up again for a moment, it's like, shit, like, why am I back again? And it causes even more riff or like it becomes even harder because you're beating yourself up then for not actually staying awake.
Yeah.
So it's time to stay awake, like wake up and then actually stay awake to then who you really are and your power.
It's tricky though too, because your body falling asleep, back asleep, is a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
Because it's comfortable there. It's familiar there.
Yep.
So again, like people going through this process, it's not an overnight thing. It's like you don't snap your fingers and like you wake up and become aware and then like everything's happy. It's like that's where the work starts, when you finally wake up and you're like, oh shit.
Yep.
And it's like, you know, then you need to find yourself some type of like daily or weekly or like support, like a support system or a structure you can get into, so that over time you can work with those beliefs that you have to make them more empowering, or to make them more aligned with who you want to be and what you believe the world is.
Exactly.
And that's what I think is also so the negative flip side of like social media and like what we're seeing in the news like lately and stuff, is that it's perpetuating like a certain belief system or a certain program in people.
but it's also calling it out.
Definitely.
Like
Yeah.
by pressing on it more, it's like it's causing people to pop in awakening,
Mhm.
because the people who are on the brink, they're like, nah, I'm done. Like,
Yeah.
so like it's a high time for a change. And those who actually take this wave and ride it, it will become so much easier down the road. But if you don't, then I mean, this is just life itself. Like life it's like a river. That energy of life is pouring through each and every one of us right now. And that if we're not awakening ourselves and then staying awake to that power flowing through us to then grow and expand in a way that we feel guided to, then we're like, life is going to smack us in the face, like, and many times in a bad way, to cause us to make a change. And
Yeah.
so better make the change consciously with what you want, rather than waiting for things to break down to then cause a change. So it's
It's
time. and
yeah. And
and
dude, it's like it's a public health issue.
yeah, it
Think
is.
about it, because it's like if you're in that state of that constant like irritability and anxiety and fear and stuff because you're whatever, you're not letting life flow through you in that way. Stress, like that's a huge cause and perpetuator of disease.
Mm-hmm.
Like over 70% of doctor visits are stress related. Most every disease will get worse if you're stressed. Like it's a very big key. And I feel like we're kind of getting to the crux of where science and spirituality really come together, because all this stuff we're talking about it sounds very spiritual, but it has real like scientific health, nervous system, like body physiology ramifications,
Yeah, of
which
course.
is where it gets cool. Yeah. Because you can actually make, yeah.
Dude, hold up. Where it gets cool, it's cool. It's been cool from the get. Like,
Yeah.
maybe not cool to you. Maybe that's not where you're interested in. Like, I know more in the science, but like, hold up. Don't leave that on the back end. Like that, what we've been talking about is actually really awesome as well.
Mhm.
Like, and I don't know. I don't
No,
think you meant it that way, but like,
I
still,
didn't mean it that way. It's just like, yeah.
then it gets cool.
Because then you can start
Then it
making all
gets
these,
measured.
yeah.
That's why it's cool, because then
Exactly.
it's like, you can't refute this. This is hard fact.
Well, that's the cool thing about studying science and spirituality. It's like the more you study spirituality and the more you study science, you realize how merged they are, because all these principles and all these things that we're finding out now in science, the yogis and all these like people 2,000-3,000 years ago, Jesus, they were all talking about this stuff. They
Mm-hmm.
just didn't have the instruments and the science to measure what's actually going on in your body, in your neural circuits, like with your subconscious mind, like all of this stuff. So,
They
it's
didn't
exciting
need to.
time. Yeah. They didn't
Like,
need to, yeah, they just,
like there was no, like, it's only just, this is it here. Oh man, this is gonna bring this full circle. Is with the science and the proof and all of this, it's like feeding to the rational intellect, the rational intellectual thinking mind, which is still like part of the problem. So like, even when you get the truth, you still got to really go deep within yourself, touch the spirit, come from who you really are as a soul, and then make the change. Like, it's full circle. Like,
yeah,
yes, you can get all the information, but information doesn't cause transformation. Inspiration does, and action on that.
dude.
Like, especially, dude, one final thing, and then you can
Yeah.
respond. But we live in an age of information. We're actually beyond that. I forget what people called this age is. It's not the information age. We're beyond that. But like, we
The age
literally
of
have
Ultron.
information in our pocket. We can click a button and then have anything that we want, and thousands of different results for what we're interested in, which is honestly how many people find this podcast, is just searching it. Like, we have the information, but the inspiration and the action is what's necessary, which comes from your soul, and is your soul force actually coming through the human body and the human mind. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Well, just
get
to
lit about that.
piggyback onto that, like we want to believe that as humans that we're very like rational creatures, but like we're emotional.
Mm,
Like that's why like you can present someone with facts against their position,
yeah.
but if they believe that their position is like a part of who they are, they're going to react emotionally and get more entrenched in their own position.
Yeah. And they're just going to call it fake news.
Yeah, or whatever. So yeah, we can do a whole episode on like that emotional concept piece and like
Yeah.
that inspiration and action piece, because that's a huge thing. I think that's like the next step after all of this.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Like, once you're awake to it, then it's actually like taking action on it. So yeah. And one final thing before you bring this
Yeah.
into a close, because I feel like it's getting to a close, is that you mentioned it's hard, and it is. It's not easy.
Was it
That's
worth
why I
it?
mentioned like the soul force. Like you really have to bring your full self into this whole process, and it's really not easy, and it won't ever be easy. It'll get easier. Let's go with that, but it's still challenging because you're going against like your programming, like the comfort zone, as you mentioned, the normal of your own normal, let alone everything else that you've been brought up with, and let alone the pressure from other people around you, that may be in your life still saying like, no, you're ridiculous, like you're stupid, you're crazy, like what do you think, what do you know, like, and they're coming from the old belief systems. So it's hard, but here's the thing, it's simple. It is so simple. It's identifying the belief that you want to repattern. You bring in the new belief that you want to actually believe instead, and then just rinse and repeat and keep hammering in like through repetition and an emotional impact in your days of actually believing more of the belief that you want. But it's again not easy, which is why I have a business doing what I do and helping my clients.
We don't have any training on it. It's like trying to do algebra
Exactly.
without taking any math classes. Like algebra was super easy, or like addition, subtraction, super easy. But if you don't even know what numbers are, you're going to struggle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So it's about unlearning and relearning, basically, like all this stuff. So you're right. It is simple, but it seems hard because we don't have the training. Like we're not taught this in school. So
yeah,
again, that is why you have a business.
exactly. Yeah. And speaking of which, unless there's anything else you wanted to close out with. Okay. Because this, I didn't even realize how perfect this was going to be, because I had this intention to give this gift, but it just aligns perfectly with that. This is simple. But it's not easy. And so I want to give a gift to anyone who really resonates with everything we've been sharing on this episode. And that gift is a session with me. So I'm a certified life coach. I call myself a transformational life coach. And I offer what are called strategy sessions. And a strategy session is a 60-minute phone call or video call with me on Zoom, where I get to help you go deep into understanding what are those beliefs that are limiting you right now. So it's ultimately understanding like where you're stuck at in your life right now, what you're struggling with. Then the second part is we'll dive into your vision and clarifying that and really getting into the emotional feeling of what it would be like when it's all worked out. Like when you have the new belief system, which is creating the new results that you want, that is really truly aligned with your purpose, who you really are meant to be here on this planet Earth and what you're meant to do. And then the final thing is action steps. We'll discuss and I'll help you discover what steps can you take right now to bridge the gap from where you are to where you want to be. And so all of that is in that gift. It's that full session. And at the end, if we find that we're a good fit, we can talk about working together as well in my coaching programs. But this is a full 60-minute gift to you. So if you would love to have that session, it's valued at $250. And fun fact, someone actually had paid me once for that session. Like she didn't enroll in coaching because she went with a different coach, but she was like, this session was actually this valuable, like here, which was awesome. So I could stand strong with saying that it really is worth $250. However, if you're listening to this, if you got to the end of this episode and if this resonates with you, then it's my gift to you. So if you would love that session, then in the description, you can either email me. I'll put in my email in the description, kevin@kevincarton.com. You can put in the subject line saying podcast strategy session, something like that. Or I'll put a link in the description as well. So if you can click that, just go ahead and book a session. And these sessions fill up fast. Every single week they fill up, and I only have a certain amount of spots. So if you would love this, go ahead and do that now before they do fill up for this week and the next week. So yeah, that's it.
Get on it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll talk with you in another episode. I think we should definitely do the next episode being on what you just came up with in mind before. I think that'd be really powerful to go out on. But all right, we'll talk with you in another episode. Have a great day. That's it for today. So thanks for tuning in, and we really hope you enjoyed listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed recording it. So any questions, any comments, just connect with us on Instagram. You could always DM us at Kevin Francis Carton
and at Chris J. Carton. And also, if you feel guided to, the one thing we do ask is for you to please rate the podcast and leave us a review. This way we can reach more people and impact more lives with this amazing information. With that, we'll see you on the next episode.